an outcast in everybody's life, and I am her. There's a shadow in everybody's front door, and I am her. There's a dark cloud in everybody's sunlight, and I am her. Isn't gold, at least that's what I've been told. I got so many issues and problems that I go through. Sometimes I can't sleep at night. If I hide my face, heaven forbid, it wouldn't be the worst thing that I ever did. It's a hell of a world that we're living in. James 2:10, a sin is a sin. Don't look at me immediately and whisper behind my back, thinking I'm naive. It's my southern hospitality. Tolerates more abuse than even I can believe. There's an outcast in everybody's life, and I am her. There's a dark cloud in everybody's sunlight, and I am her. The aroma lingers on generations I've known. Ain't it ironic? The smarter we get, the less we understand about the simplest shit. I am shame, she is me. We get down with our bad selves figuratively. Don't care too much what other people say. I get along swell by my goddamn self. Never ask for no one's philosophy. It's obvious I'm proud of me. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. There's an outcast in everybody's life, and I am her. There's a dark cloud in everybody's sunlight, and I am her. There's a shadow in everybody's front door, and I am her. Oh, you know I am her.
I'm just so impressed. I'm so impressed by her voice. It's really
Absolutely.
just absolutely phenomenal. And I want to talk a little bit about like her story, because I feel like it's important to kind of explain, because I was reading an interview from her with her rather with Billboard, and she talks about how when she was a lot younger, she's 40 now, or 40 at least at the time of this interview. Yeah, okay, so this was last year, so she's 40. And 20 years ago, she apparently tried to rob a convenience store. She's at a really low point. She grew up in Flint, Michigan. She's at a really low point in her life, and she felt the need to get some money. And so she ended up in prison. And in prison is where she found like a lot of her music, and that's where a lot of it comes from. And I feel like there's so many stories like that. I mean, certainly in modern like R&B and hip hop especially. And I just think that it's really amazing that, especially because she was put in a men's prison.
Oh yeah.
That's a
The
really,
dysphoria is
really
bad.
terrible experience for trans women. It's not uncommon at all, and it can lead to a lot of really horrible experiences. You hear stories all the time about trans women who were assaulted in men's prisons and stuff like that. So it really gave me like a new sense of appreciation for her as an artist and her work.
Yeah, I recently, just kind of as like a side note, I profiled for State Press this woman. She's here. She's a senior psychology student here at ASU, And she's been working with ASU, has this amazing project called the ASU Pen Project, where basically people are in correspondence, like students will be in correspondence with certain people who are incarcerated here in the state of Arizona, and they'll write each other, like, let's say, you know, you have a prisoner who wrote like a poem, they'll submit it to a student, and then the student will give them editing tips and like some critical feedback, and then they'll go back and forth from there. And it actually can end up getting published in a school or ASU school magazine called Iron City, which is like a collection. It's like a literary journal where they have art and literature from submitted from prisoners. And I was talking to her for an interview, and she's just like, she was telling me about how she had a family member who went to prison and ended up having like this new appreciation for education. And definitely Shea's story reminds me of that a lot, where it's just something about prison. I think it's because of the lack of freedom and also just the boredom of the fact that you really don't have that much to do and you're very limited in what you can do leads to a lot of really impressive creative work. And I think that the work that incarcerated individuals produce should be more acknowledged publicly.
Absolutely. I think that incarcerated individuals are often just looked down upon by society. It's a lot harder for them to kind of rejoin society after they get out of prison. And so I think that it's really cool that ASU is doing something to help these people kind of get published and get their work out there. Because I know for like people who have been in prison, that art is a solace for a lot of them. You know, it's kind of like they're like saving
Saving grace, I guess you could say.
Yeah, sure. That was what I was going to say, and then for some reason I was
like, is that the right way to say that?
I don't want to say that, but like, you know what I mean, where it kind of gives them something to do. The same thing happens, I feel like this is not uncommon for people who feel alienated by society in general. You know, it's not just incarcerated individuals. You have veterans who create very impressive amounts of work. I mean, think about people like Bob Ross or Tim O'Brien, who wrote The Things They Carried after Vietnam, or you know, the number of LGBT artists who have emerged in the past few years who write incredibly powerful songs, and certainly, you know, all the Black artists throughout history who have talked about oppression and racism. It's really just amazing.
Yeah, and for incarcerated people, I definitely think it's so ironic in America. We have this culture of, like, we don't want to talk about people in prison. We don't want to look at them. We don't want to acknowledge that they exist and that they're human beings and treat them as such, even though we have the highest incarceration rate of any industrialized nation in the world.
And we actually, I learned this. I wrote an essay last semester on private prisons specifically, and in my research for that essay, I learned that the United States not only has the highest rate of incarceration in the world, we also have the highest number of prisoners total, beating out both China and India, who both have more than 4 times the population that we do.
Which is insane.
It's insane.
And yet they're like, we never talk about them or even acknowledge that they exist. And it's just, I don't know. It's
very sad. It's very sad.
But anyway, to move on to our next artist. I know, we're getting a little deep today. I can feel it because, like, normally my voice is like very bubbly and elevated. I'm just like, yes, I'm going to talk very matter-of-factly about this subject for a number of minutes. But anyway, we have this next artist. They're more in the vein of rock. They're a punk rock band called Against Me. The lead singer is a woman named Laura Jane Grace, who came out in 2012 as a transgender woman. The album, or the band's 6th album, is called Transgender Dysphoria Blues. It was released in 2014, and you could definitely hear, I think, and kind of going back to what you said, like, and just the whole topic of this whole show in general is that pain when you are ostracized by society leads to amazing work, and it is very raw and gritty and very emotionally honest. And I think punk is probably the most emotionally honest genre that a person could get into, besides soul. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't be emotionally honest in other things, but punk for a long time, punk was associated with that.
It's so, because I'm going to sound like a music gatekeeper for a second here, so forgive me, but true punk music is produced solely for the sake of the art, and oftentimes punk bands refuse to sign record deals because they're, you know, fighting against the machine, as it were.
And that's something with this band, is that they belong to their own record label called Total Trouble Music. They were signed with a couple other record labels, independent record labels, but then they decided to kind of bring things into their own hands and make their own work, which I think is impressive. And I think that the best music is made when the artist has full control over what they want to make.
And another thing that I just remembered this. I was playing, over break, I was playing the original Guitar Hero game for the Wii, okay? Guitar Hero 3. Legends of Rock, fantastic game. You know, the best in the Guitar Hero series, in my opinion. But there is in between shows, like the loading screen will have like little one-liners on these loading screens, and one of the best the best one that I've seen ever. I don't know if I would call it like an indictment or like a joke or anything, but it says, "Remember, all record companies are evil except for the one that offers you a deal."
Exactly.
And I just, that made me laugh personally. But I have a lot of respect for people, especially in the punk world, who go off and they're like, you know what, I do want to record my music, I want it to be out there, but I'm not going to do it the way that you're telling me to. Because I feel like that is really the embodiment of the punk movement. I'm not going to do what you tell me to do.
I mean, record labels are just so soul-sucking, and it gets to a point where they don't care. I mean, I will never, ever consider 21 Pilots to be a punk band. First and foremost, would like to establish that fact. However, I mean, they even sing about how much they hate the record label industry on the song that was produced by a record label.
It always makes me laugh. Punk. I feel like most large, I don't even know what to classify 21 Pilots as, honestly, but I feel
alternative rock band.
Alternative rock, sure. A lot of rock artists in general have songs about how they don't like the music industry, and it's very funny to me. I mean, the Eagles
Nirvana.
The Eagles have talked, like, their song Hotel California, which I'm assuming everyone knows, because if you don't, you're living under a rock. Or, you know, I don't know. But if you haven't heard Hotel California, go listen to it, because duh. And that song is about a lot of things, but part of it is about the music industry and how they feel trapped. You know, it's like, oh, well, yeah, you know, like, you don't have to be here, but you have to be here, you know. And Bob Seger has a song, you know, called I Feel Like a Number, where he talks about how he hates that he's like, I'm just another person to these, you know, like, not even a person, like, I'm another number to these people.
It's dehumanizing.
It's very dehumanizing. And, you know, certainly we talked a little bit about the movie A Star is Born last semester when it came out, because we both went to go see it. But when we saw it, there's this whole scene where Lady Gaga's character, whose name I cannot remember.
It's Allie.
Allie? Okay, so Allie. And she is, like, her music starts off as very real, very raw, and then she gets signed, and all of a sudden it becomes much more overproduced. And Lady Gaga herself has talked about how that's very similar to her story, and I feel like you can see that when you look at her discography.
Oh, for sure.
As it progresses, you know, from, like, Fame Monster to, I forget the name of the album that came out.
Joanne,
yes, that's it.
The
like
Yeehaw album.
the Yeehaw album, but like a much more real album, you know. And for a long time, people discredited her as an artist, despite the fact that she has really incredible writing talent and also an incredible voice, because she was doing, for lack of a better term, bubblegum pop.
What everybody wanted her to do.
Right,
Which
exactly.
is why she deserves to win the Oscar for Best Actress. I'm just going to say it. She probably won't win it, but she deserves it.
I haven't even looked at the Oscar nominations, except
it's bad.
Except that I checked the animation ones because I wanted to make sure that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was on
Oh,
that
yeah.
list.
If it won the Golden Globe, it's going to be nominated for an Oscar.
Well, I very much hope that it wins that Oscar, because it would be... I am a big Disney fan, but it would be nice to see a non-Disney animated film win.
And it's so well done. It's incredible.
And I really feel like Vincent was snubbed a couple years ago. I don't know if you guys ever saw Vincent, but it was a movie that was... every frame was an oil painting. And it was about Vincent van Gogh. And it's all in his style. You know, and they have hundreds of artists that worked on this, and it's fantastic. And it didn't win the Oscar because the Disney movie that was nominated that year won.
What year?
Instead.
Do you remember?
I do not remember.
Because I could tell you probably who won that year if you gave me the year.
It might have lost to Moana. Very real possibility.
I mean, Moana was good,
Moana
but
was really
was it
good.
oil painting frame by frame? I don't know. But anyway, we will be playing Against Me soon. We're just getting on a very extended tangent about
Right. So anyway,
this.
Apologies for that. Here is I Was a Teenaged Anarchist by Against Me.
I was a teenage anarchist looking for revolution. I had the style, I had the ambition, read all the authors, I knew the rock slogans. There was a war, but the class war, I was ready to set the world on fire. I was a teenage anarchist looking for revolution. You remember when you were young and you wanted to set the world on fire? was a teenage anarchist, but the politics are too convenient. In the depths of their humanity, all I saw was boundless ideology, with freedom as a doctrine. Guess who was the new authority? I was a teenage anarchist, but the politics are too convenient. Do you remember when you were young and you wanted to set the world on fire? Do you remember when you were young and you wanted to set the world on fire? When you were young and you wanted to set the world on fire. I was a teenage anarchist, but then the scene got too rigid. It was a mob mentality. They set their rifle sights on me. Narrow visions of autonomy. You want me to surrender my identity. I was a teenage anarchist. The revolution was a lie. Do you remember when you were young and you wanted to set the world on fire? Do you remember when you were young and you wanted to set the world on fire? When you were young and you wanted to set the world on fire. When you were young and you wanted to set the world on fire. I was a teenage anarchist. I was a teenage anarchist. I was a teenage anarchist. I was a teenage anarchist.
Kim has some tea to talk about with the subject of the fact that, and if you listen to the song, obviously, that you just heard, they have a line that says, I was a teenage anarchist, but then the movement came too stiff.
And I want to talk about that because I was listening to this and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this song somehow perfectly sums up my feelings about like the modern day progressive movement. And like that sounds so bad for me to say. That sounds like I'm about to say something like super like mean. But I find that there's a very strong trend in recent years to kind of capitalize on radical movements, which is how you end up with like these shirts at like H&M that say like feminist as F, you know, and like stuff like this, where you end up with these radical movements being like dumbed down almost for like commercial consumption. And it's upsetting to me. And certainly I think about like, you know, how the Women's March every year since it started has been this very, very centric around cisgender women. You end up with, you know, references to female anatomy specifically that kind of just completely excludes trans women. You have women who claim to be feminists who openly exclude trans women from that narrative. I mean, something that has always bothered me is I hear people talk about how like, you know, like trans women are just men who are trying to invade women's spaces. And to me, that's just what, like, how can you so invalidate someone like that? How can you just dehumanize them like that and say like, you're not worth what I am?
There's something to be said about protecting female genitalia that I respect. I think that there's a lot of issues around female anatomy that needs to be discussed and should be represented. But at the same time, you also, I think, need to have that conversation about the fact, like we mentioned, that trans women are dying and that no one's talking about it and that they're still being discriminated against. And you think about the progression of the gay rights movement that I think almost now in a lot of, at least, you know, urban places, that we've kind of lessened our homophobia that we had like even 10 years ago, but there's still this lingering transphobia that nobody wants to talk about. Oh,
absolutely. And even within the gay community. And I can say this because I am a member of the LGBT community. I'm bi myself, and I see it constantly with like gay and bi people who are cisgender who look down on trans people, and almost some of them even want them out of the community entirely and think that their issues are not related to ours, which is really upsetting because the LGBT community owes a lot to trans people and trans women especially. I mean, I think about, there's Marsha P. Johnson in particular, who is the woman who threw the first brick at Stonewall. Like, we make jokes about, like, you see these memes all the time that's like, oh, Macklemore threw the first brick at Stonewall, which I love the same love memes personally. I think they're really funny. But Marsha P. Johnson was a black trans woman who is still alive. And she is the person who literally threw the first brick at Stonewall. And people completely gloss over that story. They invalidate her identity, try to say that she's just a confused gay man. And it's really upsetting.
Right. And that's a big thing. Like, I'm a huge fan of RuPaul's Drag Race personally. And there's I've been watching the All-Star season where there's a woman named Gia Gunn, who on her original season was identifying as a gay man. At that time, he used male pronouns, but he did drag, and through the process of drag, discovered that he actually was a trans female and didn't realize it until later in his life. But his identity is still legitimate, and
absolutely,
we need to be able to say there's a difference between drag queens who are in their normal presentation are gay men, cisgender men who identify as men, but also that we need to acknowledge that drag can also be used. It is a form of gender expression and gender exploration, that it's kind of like gay men can be drag queens and trans women can be drag queens, but being a drag queen doesn't inherently mean that you're only a gay man or you're only trans.
Right, exactly.
Like, it's like they can be both, but that it doesn't go backwards.
And that's why I think it's so important, especially like for the LGBT community as a whole, to really come together on this, because trans issues and gay issues are not two separate camps. They're very closely related. And I think that it's very important that everyone support the trans people in their lives and what they're going through, because
listen to their stories.
Listen to the stories and listen to them. Believe them when they're telling you what they're talking about. Don't just be like, oh, it's all in your head, you're making it up, because that's so unbelievably hurtful.
It's gaslighting, and it's not necessary to do that at all to anybody.
Is. And to people who have that mentality where they're like, oh, well, I just don't understand it. I don't understand physics. That doesn't mean gravity doesn't apply to me.
So, but we do have a new artist that we wanted to discuss. So this is a little bit more difficult. So we had a band that I found called the Worriers. Like you worry, not warrior, but worrier. And the lead singer is a woman named Lauren Denzanito, or Denezio. That's how it is, not Denezito. Anyway, she is not trans, but there is a bandmate in the band named Audrey Z Whitesides, who is a trans woman.
And what position in the band is she?
She is a guitarist.
Okay.
And so she is contributing to the art of this song and to this band, but she is not the lead singer. So we just want to differentiate that, because I know we generally try to focus on the singers themselves on our show, but I just want to specify that yes, she is making art. It's just the lead singer is not a trans woman herself. She is cisgender.
No, right. But I have a ton of respect for the musicians who kind of get overlooked in bands a lot of the times. The reason that we don't feature any band that has a woman in it on this show is just because, like, a female guitarist is great, but if it's still a male singer, that's kind of still the picture that people will have in their heads, And
usually the singers are also the songwriters of the band, so it's like they're inserting their own narrative, which I'm not saying that what men talk about isn't important. It is important, but we're just trying to bring
not the focus of our show.
Exactly. We're not man haters. Just want to clarify that. But the song we're going to play is called They, Them, Theirs, which I know is a big controversy, especially in journalism, because they're like, it's a plural pronoun. You can't use a plural pronoun as a gender-neutral pronoun.
AP style is
a nightmare.
A time.
It
doesn't use the Oxford comma, so we can't trust it for anything.
That's all I'm going to say. So anyway, here's the Worriers.
What if there's no better word than just not saying?
What a good time.
What a great
But
song.
yes, I have many issues about the whole pronoun thing. Like, I was reading a story, I don't remember the name of the artist or the writer, but there was a thread on Twitter where this writer was going to get published in this publication, and she was going back and forth with the editor, and the editor was like, no, we can't use the they pronoun because it's incorrect in the way that you're trying to use it as a singular pronoun when it is inherently a plural pronoun, and that was originally what it was intended to do. And she's like, okay, but here's the thing, like, language evolves. The English that we speak now isn't the same language that we speak 50 years ago, let alone maybe even 1 year ago in some ways, or 500 or whatever.
Right.
It changes.
No,
especially the
absolutely.
English language. I think it evolves faster than probably most languages do.
Because it makes no sense.
Exactly. So you can basically just do what you want. And so the fact, I think pronoun, like, correction gets used as a way of
I also
eliminating
think-
identity a lot.
No, not to like get on a soapbox here or anything, but even people who are staunchly against using they, them as singular pronouns regularly do so when they're referring to someone whose gender they don't know. Right? I just did it right now without even thinking about it. Referring to general, like, some other person who I don't know, they are referring to something because you do it without thinking about it. The expression to each their own, right, is singular they. And when you say, you're at a party and you notice that somebody lost their wallet, you say, oh, someone lost their wallet, not someone lost his or her wallet, because his or her doesn't sound right when you're saying it out
clunky.
loud. It's very clunky. And so even though that's grammatically correct, you don't, like, the way that it's actually used in language is just not that. It's not that. And people get mad. I mean, I feel like non-binary people just can't win with this, because if you use they, them, people are like, oh, that's not grammatically correct. And then if you make up new pronouns, like zir, for example, which can be xe, xir, or ze, zir, people are like, oh, that's not a real word. And so you're
no
trapped
choice.
in this limbo where you just have nothing, and that's not fair. And it's people talk about, like, the identity police, right? This is identity policing. This is telling someone you cannot be this because I'm telling you that you can't. And
Which
that's
is like, who are you to tell me to do anything?
exactly. And even if you don't believe in other genders outside of male and female, who are you to tell anyone else how to identify themselves, how to refer to themselves?
As long as they're not hurting anybody else.
And here I am, again, specifically referring to people neutrally without even thinking about it. And I know that it could come across like I'm doing this intentionally. I'm really not. It's just something that people do.
It's internalized.
It
and
is.
It's very normal. Yeah, I don't know. That upsets me a lot. And I hope that with the evolution of journalism as an evolving field, as most fields really are when it comes to communications, that is something that gets corrected and amended.
Certainly.
And even included in our AP guidebook, maybe
And
2019.
I always think, right, here's to hoping that the Associated Press catches up with the times. But I always think, for example, there are things that are now prohibited by AP style that were previously considered perfectly fine. Back in the 40s, it wasn't considered a bad thing to refer to someone with the R slur. I'm going to call it a slur because it kind of is, referring to people with disabilities. Hopefully you can piece together what it is, because I'm not going to say it. And so, that is no longer an acceptable way to refer to people. And even in the style book itself, it says you cannot refer to somebody as mentally,
or the way that we talk about, like, email and the internet has evolved from the 90s until now, because it's become more normalized. Like, with
website
email,
used to be 2 words. Now it's not anymore. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
There's so much that changes with language, especially in the modern era when people are constantly inventing new ways to refer to things. I know that people get upset about, like, text speech, for example, but think about the whole new language that has kind of been created to convey ideas in short form. It's
absolutely.
Personally, I think that Benjamin Franklin would be proud of us for coming up with so many ways to convey things in short form, because he hated unnecessary letters. And so, if you want to get all, like, traditionalist on me, I'm going to say that Benjamin Franklin would be an advocate for text speech. Benjamin Franklin would exclusively reply to things with LOL. I know this. I feel it in my heart.
He's a meme.
He was a meme, always.
This is, okay, just before we switch topics, I just want to say this because this is hilarious. It's one of my favorite Benjamin Franklin stories. There's, like, a story where he was at a party and he, like, tried to hit on this girl, and, like, she was, like, not vibing with him at all. And he like, went home and laid in bed for, like, a whole day because he was so embarrassed. Like, he couldn't leave his bed because he just felt so bad about what happened. Which is like, that's such a move. That's me. I've done that.
I mean, yeah, sometimes you embarrass yourself, like the person at the movie theater says, enjoy your movie, and you say, you too, and then you just gotta lie in bed all day the next day.
Pretend like it didn't happen.
I'm never saying anything ever again. No words will ever leave my mouth.
Anyway, so our next artist is Mya Burne. She's an American singer-songwriter, and she plays mostly Americana. 40 years old, and she does a combination of folk, blues, and country, which is a good old time. And
that's a great combination.
It is a good combination.
I just want to say something on the country part of that. So many people will say oh, I hate country music, and if you don't like modern country music, that's fair. Okay.
Yeah, I don't like stadium country
as
personally.
a whole. Yeah, stadium country is what it's generally referred to, and fair enough, because a lot of that, I feel like I'm never gonna sum it up as well as comedian Bo Burnham did when he did
Pandering.
But yeah, I forget what that song is called, but it's something to the effect of how he's talking about how stadium country is like, oh, I'm a rich person who's pandering to actual working class people by talking about cold beer Friday night,
Right, and it's like you've never done any of that in your life. Like you own a ranch that you never go to. It's like, I think that's the line in it.
Yeah, and I write songs about riding tractors in the comfort of a private jet, and I feel like there's just no more there's nothing else to be said. Like, he just covers every base in that song. But also, even if you're like, no, I just don't like country music, you know what? Every time Jolene comes on, every time Before He Cheats comes on, or Life is a Highway,
it's a bop.
You're all liars. Everyone's a liar. Everyone says they hate country music, and then, Carrie Underwood is like, I dug my key into the side of his pretty little souped-up four-wheel drive, and everyone's like, I carved my name into his leather seats. Like, it's just, you know what? You're all liars.
Yeah, and especially when, we were talking about, Lady Gaga released Joanne.
Exactly.
Every gay person in the world became a country music fan, and I don't want to hear about it.
I never like it when people just say that they don't like a genre as a whole. Because I feel like it is impossible to dislike every single song and every single artist in a single genre. And I will be honest, I used to be one of those people that was like, I don't like hip-hop, I listen to real music. And if you don't think that certain kinds of music are real music, you're just wrong.
Because here's the thing about music is that everything, when one genre innovates one thing, like a different style or a new sound, every other genre takes it. Mm-hmm. Hip-hop is one of the most innovative genres of music, ever. It's especially now in the 2000s, and everybody steals techniques from hip hop.
Absolutely, everyone does. I mean, and certainly I know people who are like, oh, I don't listen to hip hop, I listen to real music, and it's like, okay, cool. There are rap as a thing is used across genres. There are you could go back to Johnny Cash has technically rapped in some of his songs because he's doing spoken word instead of singing, which is at its bare bones definition what rap is. And so you can't say as a whole that you're just opposed to a certain musical technique, because that doesn't make any sense. And certainly we can talk about the sources of why people might not consider a genre like hip hop, which is very black dominated, to not be real music. There's certainly a lot
There's a lot of tea there.
And certainly going back to people didn't like rock and roll until it wasn't a black music genre anymore, and people didn't like jazz until it wasn't a black music genre anymore. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of music history there that I could go into right now, but I'm not going to, because that's not the point of this. But I'm just saying, don't indict an entire genre. I feel like indict is my word of the day, because how many times have I said that now? 3? Yeah, don't say write off. I'm going to use that instead. Don't write off an entire genre of music just because you don't like, She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy.
Because, and as much as I think my tractor's sexy, leaves nothing to the imagination. Some of the deepest and most complex lyrics have come out of country music, and I would encourage you, especially for people who appreciate lyrics, to listen to country music like Dolly Parton and, like you said, Johnny Cash.
Right.
Some of the best lines. Also, I love the line with Johnny Cash where he's like, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. Like, tell me
How
that's not more
brutal
gangster
is
than
that?
anything that Kendrick has ever rapped in his life. Mad City and I Shot a Man in Reno Just to Watch Him Die are on the same level to me. I don't care. They're
I
both
feel like I shot a
cool.
man in Reno just to watch him die is something that like Biggie Smalls could have said.
Oh, for sure. And I wouldn't question
It would not sound out of context at all.
Exactly. So anyway, we're going to play Mya Burne, and the song is Don't Hurt No One No More. Hope you enjoy. It's a little slow.
There was a moment, a sweet, sweet moment when you gave to me all the emotion, every bit of love could wrangle free. Forever wasn't reach, it seemed, but I couldn't let that be. I don't hurt no one no more. Don't hurt no one no more. There was a memory, a sweet, sweet memory of what could have been. Watching velvet sunrise cross the circles round your eyes and now unmade bed. Believe me, all I told you was true, but I couldn't give myself to you. I don't hurt no one no more. Don't hurt no one no more. Oh, sugar darling, I can't keep falling. My love only causes pain. So here we are, baby. I don't know if I'll make it to my own bitter end. I got so much to uncover, to learn to be your lover, let alone your friend. So please let me move on. I wish I didn't have to be gone. I don't hurt no one no more. Don't hurt no one no more. Oh no. Don't hurt no one no more. 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 No. Don't hurt no one no more. Don't hurt no one no more. Don't hurt no one no more.
Interesting thing about that song is that it came out in 2014, which was the same year that she came out as a trans woman openly, which is really cool.
That's very
Good for her.
exciting. I'm so happy for her. No, genuinely though, because that's not an easy thing to do.
It's not.
And to release music at the same time is really that's amazing.
Yeah, it says prior to her, I'm reading her Wikipedia page because that's all we do here on the radio show. Is it says prior to her transition, she performed and published under her birth name Jeremiah Burnham or Birnbaum, and she is the granddaughter of an anesthesiology pioneer, which is cool. Good for her. Anesthesiology is an important field, and
It is.
you got to pay attention to it. Goodness gracious. But no, it was funny because Kim's mom texted us during the show and was giving us crap about our feelings on country music.
Taylor,
and
I don't know if
urban.
you can say that on the air.
What?
I don't know if you can say this.
C-R-A-P?
C-R-A-P. I'm not sure. Honestly,
I think you
if
can.
you try to find the FCC guidelines for what you can and cannot say, they won't tell you. They don't have a list of words that aren't allowed. They just say don't use inappropriate language, which can mean a whole lot of things.
If I can say that word in a Mormon church, I think I will be fine, because Mormons are like my guideline just from growing up Mormon. They're my guideline of like, oh, like this is what we can say and this is what we can't. But anyway, our next artist that we're going to play is a lady named Ahnoni. And she is considered to be a pioneer in as a trans female artist in the music industry. And I will be honest, I was listening to some of her songs. They're very slow, they're very experimental, and I didn't really want to play two slow songs, but that's kind of like her jam.
Yeah, but I mean, that last one wasn't too slow.
No,
I mean,
it wasn't
maybe a little bit outside of the realm of rock, but like not that slow. And so I think that this song is definitely a lot slower because I was listening to it. I had a hell of a time trying to find some of these.
Oh, someone's cursing now. Goodness gracious.
I know.
Heckin'.
What would my grandmother say? No, but I was having a hell of a time trying to find these songs earlier because these artists are very small. And thankfully, everything that we wanted to play was on iTunes, but certainly their whole libraries are not. A lot of these artists still use Bandcamp,
right?
Which is, just. By the way, if you're ever curious and you want to find like some really good music by some really small artists, Bandcamp is a great site to look on. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of SoundCloud, and like it's okay, but personally, I think Bandcamp is a lot better because you have a lot of self-published people there. I mean, SoundCloud as well, but SoundCloud, is. I've got beef with SoundCloud, but it doesn't matter.
I'm sorry. Well, it's because here's the thing. I don't think SoundCloud as a platform is bad. I think that there are individuals who use SoundCloud that are trolls, that are absolutely ridiculous and delegitimize the work that other really good artists do on SoundCloud. But no, it's not a bad platform. It's just, Tekashi69 made it all look bad for all of us. So.
Right. So on my floor, almost everyone has a whiteboard on their door because my CA... the CA's on my floor, and that's the floor that's above me, so kindly gave us all whiteboards to attach to our doors. I don't know if that was like an ASU thing or if they did it or what, because, they are ASU whiteboards, but, we all have whiteboards on our door. And when I got back from break, written on every single whiteboard was follow me on SoundCloud and then, like, a link. And I don't understand.
We had kids like that in my school. They would tape it on the lockers.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean,
you gotta get
here's
the clout.
The thing. There were two people at my high school that, as far as I know, there were two people at my high school who actually used SoundCloud and like uploaded music to there, and they were both talented individuals. I mean, high schoolers, but talented individuals. But I can't get over like that mental block that I have in my head about like SoundCloud.
It's right way. That's all I hear in my head. Yeah.
It's just like how I understand. I feel like SoundCloud is almost like the Wattpad of music publication.
And DeviantArt of music publication.
It's just like there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but there are so many bad things on it that you're just.
It's just the people. Just people ruin everything.
It's the users.
People ruin everything.
Anyway, that very long tangent aside, here is "Paradise" by Ahnoni.
Paradise. myself here.
Very dark and brooding, though. That was good.
Wow. I just went to turn the mics back on because we had to turn them off while the music was playing, and Taylor had already done it. So on top of things.
Overachiever of the year. I'm always on it.
Yeah. Okay. So that concludes our set list for the theme that was related to today, which is featuring trans women, of course. But today is also just so happens to be my mom's birthday. So I wanted to play a song for her. Because it's her birthday, and I want her to feel special.
Aw, shucks.
And I also didn't text her until almost like 10 a.m., and I feel kind of bad about that. Actually, it was probably after 10 now that I'm thinking about it, to wish her happy. Actually, I called her, if that makes it better, but I wished her a happy birthday. Kind of late, so I want to make it up to her by playing a song. So one of my mom's favorite artists, and this is something that Taylor and I have both talked about how our moms really both love Pat Benatar, and of course we love Pat Benatar.
We play her
here on
all
Vixen
the
Voices.
time.
We are big fans. So I wanted to kind of tell a story that I think is funny related to a particular Pat Benatar song. So when I was like 8, I think, my music teacher in elementary school, I don't know if you had music.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
We'd play with like xylophones and stuff.
Did you do the recorders?
Yes.
So good.
8th grade. 3rd grade.
Yes.
When I was 8. That was what I was trying to.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, the recorders were a time. I still have mine somewhere. I think it's in my room.
Hot cross buns
home.
all day, every day.
Hot cross buns. We actually had a system, this is going off on a tangent, but we had a system with our recorders where we did recorder belts, so we would play more difficult songs, and every time we learned a more difficult song, we get a new little ribbon tied around. It was like the belts in like karate, so you started with a white string, you work all the way up to a black string. It was very exciting.
Ooh, were you a recorder master?
I was not. I only got to the green string. Very sad.
Very disappointed.
Anyway, Mrs. Matten was my music teacher in elementary school. Not that that name holds any significance to anyone except for me. But I love her so much. She's such a nice lady. Every time I see her, she gives me a hug.
You see your old elementary school teachers? Is your town that small?
Well, no. But I had my sibling, my sister is 6 years younger than me. She's the youngest in my family, and so up until 2 years ago, she was still in elementary school. So I would still go back and like see her chorus concerts, and I'd say hi. So it's been a while, but every time I saw her, she would give me a hug, and it was very exciting. Very nice lady. But she had a day where she wanted us to bring in CDs and play like our favorite song off the CDs. And so I asked my mom for a CD, and she gave me a Pat Benatar Greatest Hits CD, as you do. And I was looking at the songs in the back, and I knew Heartbreaker, and I knew Hit Me With Your Best Shot from Guitar Hero. Back to that.
Right.
And so, like, these are the songs that I knew. And then there was a third song. It was called Love is a Battlefield, which is a fantastic song. But I mistook it for a different song that was popular back in the early 2000s. That was like, it went something like, why does love always feel like a battlefield? You remember that?
Kind of vaguely.
Vaguely? Okay, yes. This was like one of those like pop songs. It was like a pop like ballad, I guess you could kind of describe it as. I'm not really sure. But I thought that was that song, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that Pat Benatar sang that. She doesn't. I don't know who sings that song. I don't know what it's called. It exists. That's all I know. I have a memory of it. So I played Love is a Battlefield by Pat Benatar by accident. Had no idea what it was, but it was an absolute jam. And the next time that I heard Love is a Battlefield by Pat Benatar, I was watching 13 Going on 30 for the first time in my now stepdad's old house. He was not my stepdad at the time, but we were hanging out in his house because obviously he was dating my mom, and his dog was there, and it was very nice. I was having a good time. It was a good time. We had pizza. It was very fun. So anyway, here is Pat Benatar's Love is a Battlefield for my mom. Happy birthday.
We are young, hearted to heart, we stand. No promises, no demands. Love is a battlefield. We are strong. No one can tell us we're wrong. Sunshine.
All right.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. We had a really great time. Happy birthday again to Kim's mom.
Right.
We hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yes, thank you so much for listening, and enjoy whatever comes after this. I don't even know.
I don't know, someone at 3 o'clock, but they're going to be great. I can guarantee that. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.